Hey there and welcome in. Thanks so much for stopping by my channel. Today, I want to talk to you about how I bought my first home in California when I was 24 years old. So as you may or may not, and probably do know, California is one of the most expensive places to live in the world, and even in our country, in the US. The housing market here is intense. So you might be thinking to yourself, how did you afford a home in such an expensive state at 24 years old? And I want to talk to you about how it's possible to buy a home in California, even when you're really young, even when you might not have millions and millions of dollars, because I sure didn't when I bought my home. So for some context, I bought a home in Placer County, California. So it's not the most expensive county in California by any means, but it is still more expensive than the national average. I didn't go and buy a mansion for my first home, so obviously that is an important thing to do. And I'd say the very first thing that made a big impact was setting the right expectations. So to tell you about the story, I want to set the scene a little bit because the way my life looked back then is very different than the way my life looks now. So I graduated college. I had basically been working for 2 years, and I was, for the first year, basically getting by paycheck to paycheck. I worked in research and I did some fantastic work. I even got published, which was such a blessing. But needless to say, I was working out of passion, out of growing my career, out of exploring a career option, and I wasn't bringing in the big bucks. But what I was doing was being really meticulous with my budget. So at least everything that I was bringing in, I was using to pay off bills, not accumulating debt, and also trying to build a good credit history. Because fun fact, I didn't even have a credit card until after I graduated from college. That's one thing that I did. I wasn't making bank, but I was being smart about the money that I had. Then COVID happened, and I decided, like many, that I was gonna move back home. So I left the apartment that I was living in with some of my great friends, which was a really hard decision, and I moved back in with my parents. Now, I will say this decision wasn't primarily financial by any means. It was for health and safety and also to be close to family members. I do have family members that have chronic illness and other things, so I could be more present to help cook and caregive. And what ended up happening was keeping my job remotely while doing that allowed me to save a lot more. Now, you might be saying, Christina, I don't want to live with my parents. I'm out of college. I'm too old, whatever. That is up to you. That is your situation, and you need to make the best decision for yourself when it comes to where you live. There's so many different options to make housing more affordable without having to go back and live with your family, but that was the right solution for me. And so at the same time that I was doing that, my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, who I love so much, he was working full-time and living at home with his parents as well for very similar reasons. So I will say, if you have that relationship with your family, if there is this space to live with them, I would recommend that. Actually, that was a great thing to bond my family even closer and allow me to really build up some savings so that I could put a great down payment on my home. I won't share specific numbers because that's private, but I will say that without outside help from family or anyone else, between my husband and I, we were able to put 20% down on our home, which helped us avoid private mortgage insurance and other things that can just cost that can stack up, especially when you're a first-time home buyer. Life kept happening, right? My husband at the time, who was my boyfriend, proposed to me, and we wanted to find and create a great place for us to live and to build a life together. We didn't want to spend all this money to rent a home, but we didn't necessarily want to be in a small apartment and not have the space to work and exercise and do a lot of the things that we actually do at home. I had always dreamed of owning a home. I just didn't think it'd be possible for me. And I thought, you have to have millions and millions of dollars to afford anything in California, right? That was my mentality. Rather than letting the fear and the worry of it get in the way, I got connected to a realtor who did an amazing job, who said, hey, this is where the market is. If you knew anything about the COVID market, it was a little bit of madness because interest rates were really low. Housing prices, of course, went up, and there was so many people bidding on homes because of the interest rates and because of remote work. People were relocating all over the place. So there was this great migration happening, essentially. And that was not making it easy to buy a home. But our realtor essentially introduced us to a few different lending and mortgage professionals so that we can go through and kind of interview and shop around for mortgages. Now, even though I'd been building my credit history, I found out that I didn't have enough lines of credit. So at first I was really discouraged, but our realtor helped us and she introduced us to some other lenders. And there was one in particular that didn't have that same requirement of needing 3 lines of credit. So we went through and I was so thankful to find that. And my husband and I, we had to submit all of our information, all of our, how much money we had, how much savings we had, how much debt, all that stuff. And they basically reviewed all of it and they approved us for a certain amount. And I will say, it is so important not to forget things because my husband and I at the time were both working 9-to-5 jobs, but he also had his side business of doing photo and video. And at first we didn't think to include that, but when we did, it actually increased our pre-approved amount by so much. Because if you think of how much that can compound over the years, they can actually approve you for way more. So at this point, we had the mortgage approval, the pre-approval, and we were working with our realtor and we were going and looking at homes. I remember there was a couple homes we were really excited about that we completely lost out on because someone either bid way over asking, like hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s above the listing price, or a buyer would come in from the Bay that was all cash, right? Someone in a very different life stage that I was in, or they would waive all their contingencies. And as someone who had never owned property before, I didn't feel comfortable with that. And I also didn't want to waive my contingencies. I wanted to get the home inspected. I wanted to do a pest report. I wanted to check for mold and all these things because I didn't have all this crazy disposable extra income and money to fix a property that I hadn't fully inspected. And if you're a first-time home buyer, I would say that's really good advice. You want to make sure that you're getting an investment that is sound structurally and from a health perspective. You do not want to run into a nightmare scenario with the biggest financial transaction that you'll probably make at that point in your life. And there were moments where we said to ourselves, maybe this isn't the right time. Like, it's really cool. We've learned a lot. Maybe we aren't going to be able to buy a home right now. Maybe that's not in the cards for us. And honestly, that was okay. We knew that wherever we were going to end up, whether it was renting or buying, that we were going to be okay and that we could make the best of it. So I remember this so vividly about when we actually found this house. I remember thinking, wow, this home is awful. And we immediately moved it to the rejected pile. Why did I think it was awful? It was bright pink and blue. It was crazy. The photos were not staged in any way that I would. You could see that there was some dirt and grime in the photos. You could see pet beds and other things. And as someone who has some allergies, I thought, oh no, there's no way. Well, a week went by, and because of the way that this home was essentially put on the MLS, it didn't get any offers, which was wild for that time. Going 7 days without getting any offers was basically unheard of because most homes were getting into contract sometimes on the first weekend of being listed. So this is why working with a great real estate professional will really help you, because when we rejected it, after 7 days, our realtor came back to us and she said, hey, I know you rejected this property because of the way it looks, but it's actually in a really cool location. It's exactly where you say you want to be set up, and I think you should give it a look. I was in the Bay that day working, and I couldn't make it out. And the home was scheduled to have showings the next day, like 8 showings. And so my husband said, hey, what if my dad and I go and we check out this home today and I FaceTime you? So they go to this home and they're walking around it and they FaceTime me. And I remember my husband saying, Christina, this home is actually way better than it photographs. And I could see us building a life here. But the problem is, a lot of people are going to come see this home tomorrow and they might also have that same opinion. So if we want it, if you feel comfortable, we should put an offer in tonight. Now, I know a lot of people would not be comfortable with this, but I said, yep, let's go do it. Let's put an offer in. So our realtor got to work and she crafted us an offer. And the craziest thing of all was we made it due that night before any showings. And by the end of the night, after a counter or two, we were in contract. We got it for the listing price. And this was in a market, remember, when homes were regularly going 50, 100,000 over asking. We had to be willing to come in and essentially flip this home from the inside. So it wasn't easy going. It wasn't like we got the keys right away, which, funny story, we got the keys maybe 5 days before our wedding. So talk about having a lot of fun yet stressful things happening all at once. But I remember coming back after our honeymoon, and we had to basically redo this entire house in order to make it clean, in order to make it fit who we were, in order to make it functional for us. So we installed hardwood flooring on our own. We tore down walls. We completely redid the kitchens and all the bedrooms. And that meant that for a couple months, we were living, I remember sleeping on our mattress on a tarp on concrete, basically glamping in our own home with certain walls, actually interior walls, I should say, open. We were not living this lavish lifestyle. We knew that we were going to get equity and build equity in this home by adding value to it ourselves and putting hard work and sweat and tears into it. We have been able to transform this house and greatly increase the value of it so that one day, if we ever do sell it, we'll get a great return on our investment. And it just gives me so much pride and joy because it set us up so well. So if you're someone who wants to buy a home in California and it feels completely impossible, I want to tell you that you can do it. You might need to be creative. You might need to adapt a little bit. There might be some tweaks you need to make in your lifestyle. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but you can do it. And if you want to learn more, or if you want to work with a real estate agent like me who's been there, who's been in your shoes, let's talk further. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to learn your comments and your thoughts. Please put them in the comments down below. Please also like and subscribe. It really helps me know what you're interested in and what I can keep making videos about, which I absolutely love doing. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I will see you in the next one. Bye now.